Hey, everybody. In today's episode, it's myself, Kayla, and Nicole. Kayla's somebody that just celebrated 1 year sober yesterday, and Nicole is her primary therapist. Nicole's her primary therapist as she came through the program here at Rock Recovery Center. Kayla is a true representation of what sobriety has to offer you. She goes into detail of what her experience was like here in treatment while she was at Rock Recovery Center. Her and Nicole go into detail about the things that they worked on throughout the therapeutic process. It's not just about putting down the drink. It's not just about putting down the drug. There's underlying stuff in anybody that needs to be addressed. Kayla had a lot of things that she had to overcome throughout the early stages of her sobriety. She found out about her biological father at the age of 30. Somebody that she thought she was going to have a relationship with ended up overdosing and passing away. A lot of things happened, but you know what? She stayed sober. She stayed grinding on her sobriety, and the transformation's real. And she comes on here to share with you her experience. I know you're going to love this show. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Nicole.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Nicole.
Hi.
We have a lovely lady by the name of Kayla. Kayla, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good, thank you. First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, ladies?
That's right. Period.
Real quick, also go to Facebook. If you want to join our Facebook support group, just go there and type in the Sobriety Network. Are you in there, Kayla? If not, you need to be. You will not leave this building until you're a part of the Sobriety Network. You're already there.
I'm already there.
Yep.
I'm just not pulling out my phone this very moment, but I will be.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you go there, Facebook, and join the Sobriety Network. All is welcome. If you've been affected by addiction in any capacity, whether it's you yourself, if you're in recovery, if you need to be in recovery, you definitely need to get in there. Or if you're a parent or a loved one and you have somebody in your life that has struggled with addiction or alcoholism, we want to welcome you there. It's kind of the town hall of addiction and alcoholism. So, hi, ladies.
Hi, Thomas. Hello.
Glad we can make this happen.
Me too.
Thanks.
All right. You guys are going to be in sync the whole time.
Always.
All right.
You're welcome.
I got to navigate this.
You're going to do great.
Yeah.
So today's a special, well, kind of today, but today's a special day for us. This lady's sitting to my right, your left, if you're watching on the tube of views. Her name is Kayla. And Kayla, what happened yesterday?
Yesterday was my 1 year in recovery.
Yes, it was.
1 year sober. If I had a medallion, I would give it to you right now.
Thank
but
you.
I don't. I have a nicotine pouch.
I'm okay.
All right.
That's recovery.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll do a brief introduction, and we're going to get right into this. Kayla is somebody that came into the program, and if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you've heard me say we look for people that are going to be assets to the community. When I say asset to the community, I mean somebody that gives back to the community in different ways, shapes, or forms. Kayla is somebody that came into the program, and you can tell really from the beginning that she was going to do well. I do have one thing in my mind, though, that I'm going to bring up. But lo and behold, here we are 1 year later, and I can't even believe it that it's been a year. You're sober.
Sober.
And it's amazing to see what happens when somebody comes in to our program, or any program for that matter, and utilizes it for everything that it has to offer.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times people, they don't do that. And you don't get what Kayla has. And this is a true testament to all the hard work that you put in. So we wanted to have you come on the show and share what it was like for you, the treatment process and stuff like that, and where things are for you now. And I thought it would be a good idea to have Nicole on because she was your primary therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. Thank goodness.
Nicole, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Oh my gosh, I'm already crying.
Oh, well, you know what? Good thing is I have.
Oh, tissues
Papa Tom.
with your face on them.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Tammy, compliments to you. I know you're going to hear this. And I have a tissue box here with our
Oh, look at this.
faces on it in case tears are shed.
No shame on that plug right there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
That's beautiful.
It is.
anyways, go
I'm
ahead.
thoroughly
Nicole.
impressed.
So, yes, so I worked with Kayla when she was here at Rock and even after,
Mhm.
right? And so we continue to work together and on and off as she needs it at this point. But I am just completely blown away at your transformation and the woman that you are. And I
Oh, boy.
I know.
It's already started.
know.
Here.
It's just, it's like
Here, just hold on to these.
you get into this field and you're not in the business of outcomes, and that's something that as a human being you have to come to terms with, because the reality is not everybody does stay sober, right? But we get those rare cases and situations where we get to see someone like yourself, and it's why I wake up and come to work every day, is because of people like you.
Oh.
And you are she is one of the most resilient young women, human beings I've had the privilege of knowing, and being an honor to be a part of your journey. And it's just, I adore you.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
Ooh,
All right, let's get into
that's
this.
crazy to hear. It's just
I agree with everything that you said. Now let's get into the backstory.
Yes.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from,
Okay.
what landed you here, and we'll go from there.
Okay. I'm Kayla. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi,
and
Kayla.
I'm from California. Originally, I moved around a lot as a kid. I lived in New Mexico for a little bit, Oregon for a little bit, all before like the 4th or 5th grade. And then I moved to a tiny little country town. And I spent my high school years there. Started to experiment probably when I was I think I had my first drink at like 12, and there's a whole funny backstory to that. But in the end, like originally, like I had my first drink before I ever used anything else. But marijuana was like my drug of choice for like 15 years, and it saved my life at the time. I was suicidal as a teen, and so that was like my thing for probably like 13, 14 years actually. And then in 2018, my parents decided to move to Florida, and they bought a house that had a nice like back suite. So I had like my own little apartment, and I moved out here. I think I had just turned 24 or 25. And things kind of took off from there. Pretty quickly, I met my ex-husband in Florida. He was one of the first people that I met. We spent some time together, broke up, got back together, got married, moved to Korea for a year because he was military. And that's when things like really picked up with the drinking. The marriage didn't work out. I moved back home with my mom and dad. And over that year, I thought that everything would get better. And it just got worse and worse and worse with the drinking. Not so much with the drugs or anything like that. But the drinking was just like, it was at the all-time low. So I realized that my ex-husband's health insurance was going to run out soon because our divorce was being finalized. And so I thought, like, if I don't go now, I'm never going to get the opportunity to go into treatment to get that therapy that I needed. Because when I first came into treatment, it was really so I could get therapy, because I knew that like the PTSD was causing me to drink and woe is me and all that. And I knew I needed more than just once a week. So I was like, okay, I'll go in for 2 weeks, get some really intensive care, go back home, start a brand new life, live my wildest dreams, et cetera, et cetera. But pretty quickly, pretty much like 24 hours into it, I was like, oh, I got some work to do. So I decided to stay and do PHP. I did detox. I did residential, PHP, and IOP at another center. And I realized that like, they were dual diagnosis type place, but I wanted something more intensive with my trauma and stuff like that. And then I found you guys. And I eventually made the decision to leave some people behind at the other treatment center, which was really hard. And I know that was God working in my life. To come here, I kind of took that leap of faith. And immediately, as soon as I walked in the building, I knew that I had made the right choice. Yeah. And then I stayed for a long time.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you know that that's what you needed? Because I've had many conversations with addicts and alcoholics, and I don't hear that often that I knew I needed intense therapy to address the trauma and all these. How did you know that?
I think that like I always had, even at my darkest days, like a little glimmer of hope. I knew that I wasn't living to this like potential that I had. I knew that my expectations that I set for myself were always very, very high, but I wasn't even meeting my own bare minimum. My days were starting to roll together. The withdrawal symptoms, like going to sleep with a bottle of vodka, waking up, not remembering the last time that I drove my car sober, because I was always drinking, not being able to hold a job. Like even as a bartender, I had lost my job for drinking too much. And I thought I was doing just fine. I didn't mess up the money. The customers loved me. Everything was great, but everybody saw me for what I was at that point. And I was listening, but I was half listening. And to be honest, it might have even been just like deference. Like I might have just wanted to like push off having to restart my life again. It could have been sheer laziness. I was like, well, if I go to treatment, I could just sit around for a while. But I knew that I needed the therapy because throughout my time in Korea and throughout the year after, I felt myself like I've always been like a very energetically attuned person. Like I felt myself shrinking. And I just was suicidal again. Like it was just not how I wanted to live my life. And I knew I didn't have any other option.
Did you want to stop drinking? I mean, looking back at that time, did you want to stop?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, about 85%. Because
Okay.
it was to the point that I was drinking against my will. Now, my willpower at that time was very minimal. I felt like I was being controlled by the drink. I told myself, okay, I'm going to go to sleep tonight. I'm going to wake up tomorrow, live my life. And then I'll drink later at night. And then I would stay in bed fighting myself for the first half hour of the day until I took that drink. And then that would just start that hamster wheel again. And then the day would roll into the next day and the same thing would happen into the next day. And I knew I wasn't contributing anything and I was doing myself and my family a disservice. But I was just miserable.
Yeah. Where at in Florida did you live?
Fort Myers.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do your parents still live over there?
They sure do.
How'd they fare through all the hurricanes this year?
They did well for the most part. A tornado is what got them.
Yeah.
It went right over their house, but
oh my God,
everything was fine, surprisingly. And then the hurricane blew up. So thank God. Thank God. They've made it through fairly unscathed through most of them because the Fort Myers Ian, I was in Korea for Ian, but that one just destroyed our town. But my parents, they had access to power and all that. They were letting people come over and shower, making food for people.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so they never even lost power.
Thank
God. All that. Yeah.
Wow. Nicole, what do you got up to this point?
I was just thinking how it, with you, Kayla, how like your intelligence has always been there. You're somebody that is extremely intuitive and very insightful and very high as far as intelligence goes. So the inner conflict of knowing the insight that something was wrong, knowing that you want something different, but then the insanity of the disease of I can't outmatch this, I can't outthink this. And how painful that must have been for you in that time, because you had some insight into what was going on when it got to that point. So when was it that did you want, like when you were in Korea, did you want help then?
Yeah. Yeah, I really did. There was a month or so in Korea where I white knuckled it and I quit drinking. And because it was military and alcohol is so prevalent in Korea, a lot of really bad things happened in Korea as a result of drinking alcohol between me and my partner. Both of us were drinking. There was a lot of hurt that would come out. I would swallow it and swallow it and swallow it sober. And then it would come out in the form of venom when I would drink, and I had asked his superiors for help, more so in getting out of the country at that point. For a while, he did like a military type rehab, went to a couple meetings, but it never really clicked. It was always like that thing where like one person is ready and the other person isn't. We just kept missing each other when it came to recovery. And it got really dangerous. It got violent. And I knew that I had to go home. And finally, I did receive that help, not through the avenue that I thought I would receive it, but I went a different path. And there were some really amazing people that got me out of there alive.
Yeah. And I was remembering that because we talked about that, how it was this God moment for you because you went through so much and figuring out the red tape and logistics of just getting yourself out of that situation. And one thing I see that's so in a common thread within your story is your tenacity and your grit to just continue to keep going.
That's so funny that you mentioned that. Like I appreciate that so much, especially coming from you. Like I felt so weak in those moments. Like it's scary because like I have been through a lot, sure, but like I just remember crying to my mom, and my mom's like, "You just got to put one foot in front of the other." And I'm drinking out of a bottle at friggin' 10 a.m. and I'm like, I can't do it. I can't get out of here. Like I can't even go another step. And she said, "You have to." And I was like, "You're right. I do have to." But I had help. I couldn't have done it alone.
I think that part, I just got goosebumps because of the fact that you're somebody that's very self-sufficient in a lot of ways. But it takes courage to ask for help. And we all need it, addict or not.
Yeah.
And there's strength in being able to say, I need support.
Yeah.
And especially with what you were going through, to ask for that is pivotal. And it took a lot of courage because there's a lot of shame that you experienced.
Yeah. Especially around the drinking aspect of it too, because the things that happened between my partner and I, like they were horrible, but asking for help and asking for assistance from people that are just working a regular 9-to-5 trying to serve their country. And I'm over here drunk and sobbing that like, I need help, like a lot of shame regarding that. Like nobody's going to take me seriously. Nobody's going to understand like how dangerous this is. And like, nobody's going to believe me because I'm just a drunk,
Yes. Oh,
yeah. That's where a lot of the shame comes from.
When you come here and you get in, how long were you sober when you got here to Rock?
So I got here on January 7th and I went into treatment November 20th. So a little over a month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You said you did detox, res, PHP, and IOP at Beach House.
Did I do IOP?
No, there's no way you did.
No.
There's no I don't even think we would have taken you, honestly.
No, I remember that because when I called you, I was officially graduating their program and I was worried if I didn't just transfer and I had graduated that I wouldn't have been allowed to come here. So it must have just been PHP.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're right. I did IOP here and then I did OP here.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, no purpose in me asking that really, but what I wanted to ask you is because we don't cover this a lot. We don't have, in terms of the podcast, we don't have a lot of client / their therapist on at the same time. I'm normally speaking on behalf of Nicole, or you know what I mean? Which I don't do a good service of. So I want to take this opportunity and really try and paint a picture of what the relationship should look like when you have a primary therapist and a client inside of treatment. Like, what were some of your takeaways there? What were Because a lot of times people could look at treatment like, oh, I'm just going to dry out, and oh, it's just a drinking problem, or oh, it's just a drug problem, when in fact it's the complete opposite. What were some of the things that you guys worked on?
Okay, this is good.
This is a really good
stuff.
question.
Yeah, so I think that the client-therapist relationship is a big part. Nicole has done a great job of making, and I know I'm not the only one that feels this, making every client feel like her only client. You know, like she holds that space so well that trust, you can tell her sincerity, and you can start building that rapport and that trust right away. Because in my previous experiences, like I've had really good therapists from the other centers, and they were all really good, but they didn't click. You know, there's a lot of people that are probably burnt out and overwhelmed, and it comes through in the work with their clients. I will say that. A lot of the stuff that we've worked on, immediately when I came in, the first thing at the front of my mind was the trauma experienced in Korea, you know? And then we started to go back and realize through a lot of talk therapy. We did a lot of talk therapy versus the EMDR therapy, which I do still want to do, but the talk therapy has actually helped a lot. We went back to a lot of like the trauma from my childhood, from my teen years, the way that I see myself and the way that I talk to myself, and how all of those like dots connect, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think that's...
Yeah, essentially, thank you for what you said. That means a lot. And I think it's getting deep to the roots, because to your point, you know, a lot of people come into treatment saying, well, if I can just quit the drink or drug, like I'm fine. Like that's it. That's my problem. But then once they start getting into the treatment process, they realize that's just a solution to something greater. That's a symptom of something greater. There's something, the real common denominator is the relationship or lack thereof with self, a disconnection to self. And hence why it's difficult to name an emotion, to even identify what it is you're feeling. How do you even process it when it comes up? And so being able to go inward and looking at, okay, you didn't just come out of the womb feeling the way you do about yourself.
It feels like that though.
It does, because it's all you know.
Yeah.
And so then we looked at, you know, how those experiences were internalized and created these negative core beliefs about yourself, and how other experiences continue to reinforce that. And then realizing it's not what happened out here. It's more so how that was internalized. And then also how that wreaks havoc on our life subconsciously. It's not that trauma comes back in memories necessarily. Sometimes it does, but it comes back in reactions to life.
That part. That's so true. Because it's like sometimes it's just like normal little things. And then all of a sudden it comes at you sideways.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the treatment aspect and the AA aspect, they're both great. You know, I don't think with where I was at when I first decided to get help, that at least at the time, I didn't think the AA would be enough. You know, I thought that I needed some real nitty gritty trauma work. And I think that everything happens for a reason. I was just talking to a classmate at school today who's just going through a lot. And it's like drugs and alcohol really is like just a scab over like a bullet wound almost. And any little thing, you just start bleeding profusely, you know? Alcohol and drugs are a problem, but really they were a solution before. You know, they were the solution. And it was all I knew. You know, just like that feeling of shame, just like that feeling of loneliness, that was all I knew. So that was like a kind of like a home base to go to, you know, feeling sad, feeling lonely, trying to numb that, but also like not numbing it and just sitting in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and so we've uncovered a lot of stuff about myself, and I see it reflected in other alcoholics and other addicts too. You know, it's a very common theme. We all feel a lot of the same stuff.
Yes. And it's like, and once you see that and have the awareness, I know it sounds very intangible what I'm saying, but it's almost like we keep, and I'm going to say we, because as human beings, we do this, how we keep replaying those scenarios that are very much similar to our traumatic experiences. It's almost like the same script and different actors. and then the same feelings arise, but the inability to even know what that is because we're just reacting in the way we've always known. This is just how it's been. But then once you realize, wait a minute, this is really what's coming up for me. Oh, this is what this is. It's not this person. And so when it comes to alcoholism and addiction, there's a disconnection to self and a lack of being able to cope with that because the one solution you had is now taken away. And now you have all these feelings and you have all these things going on internally. And it's like, what do I do with all of this stuff? You know?
Yes. Absolutely. I do know. I know very well. That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking back at your treatment experience with us, I would be remiss. What's that word mean anyway? Remiss. I've heard it used a lot.
So you just use it.
Yeah, it sounds right. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up. I distinctly remember you and I having an interaction.
We did.
Under the tiki hut. Well, it ended at the tiki hut.
Oh, I remember
It ended at the tiki
Now,
hut.
I can't remember the context of it.
Oh, I'll give it to you.
Great. Thank you. Yes, walk us through
I
this.
remember
Okay.
this.
So, not the AA poster child. No experience is perfect, right? All I did perfect was not pick up a drink or a drug. That day, I really wanted to pick up a drink.
Yeah.
Just because it was, I got my world rocked, you know? That's funny.
Thing.
Recovery.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, it took you a minute, Tom. So let me just start by saying, like, I had a lot of big things happen in recovery in my time in treatment. I did Thanksgiving, Christmas, 30th birthday, Valentine's Day, you name it. Like, a lot of big things happened while I was here. And my 30th birthday was huge, you know, for one, I didn't think I'd be 30 ever. And two, like, there were so many lessons that came out of that. Anyways, right around my 30th birthday, I get a message from a man on Facebook. And I'm like, okay. And he says, hi, my name is, I was friends with your mom in the 90s, and a really sweet long message. And he ended up saying, long story short, I think I'm your birth father.
I remember now.
Now, backstory, again, I'm a very energetically intuitive person. When I was 26, I was having a conversation with my mom. I hear this little voice in the back of my head saying, ask if your dad is your real dad. And just blurted it out. Is dad my real dad? Color drains from her face. She sits me down and tells me that my dad actually, like, adopted me. He's not my biological father.
You were 26 at the time. Okay.
And then she goes on to tell me a little bit about my biological father, how he had passed away when I was 15, when as far as to meet his sister, who I looked a lot alike, looked just like his mother. I met them. I flew back to California to see some friends, and I met my aunt, you know? So this man reaching out to me was so, like, far left field. You know, so he was like, look, I totally understand if you never want to speak to me. I would just appreciate it if you would let me know if you would be open to doing a paternity test, so I know either way. Again, I'm not here to blow up your life, and I'm sorry if you're hearing about this for the first time. So I responded, nice, you know, cordial, and I was like, I'll take the test, because I felt bad for him. Like, dang, he's been living 30 years thinking that he had this kid that's not his. You know, I talked to my mom, and my mom was like, oh, yeah, he's a nice man. He always wanted you to be his, but he's just not. You're this man's daughter, you know? So I take the paternity test, and it's like a 1 in 9 billion% chance that I'm not his child. So, like, that's my biological father. So,
let me pause you real quick.
Yes.
This whole, from 26 to 30, you're thinking that your biological father passed away.
Yes, sir.
And you flew to California and met what you thought was your biological father's mom and sister.
Sister only.
Or sister only. And she looks like you. So this solidifies, okay, my biological father passed away. And then at 30, you get the message on Facebook from some guy. You take the paternity test. He's your dad.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So that day where we were out there and I was having my meltdown, chain smoking cigarettes, really thinking about just saying, screw this, you know, on the bus or the van to the center for evening class or evening group, I got the confirmation. I
remember now,
I got the
yeah.
paternity test confirmation. And then that day, Nick pulls me into the office to tell me that like they need to move me to the other house.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like,
You
that's
remember
some
this?
really freaking bad timing, my
Yeah.
guy. Like, can I have 45 minutes? Damn. You know? And so
And
that.
Nick isn't the best person to break this kind of news.
Yeah. Bless his heart, man.
I know.
Like,
Well, I remember that because can I say this?
I
Like
don't care.
about how like you told me about how she was having that moment under the tiki hut, and I'm like, I had to kind of coach Tom into what was going on underneath it, and saying, not only did you have this concept of your reality for 26 years that was shifted at 26, shifted again at 30,
yeah.
and then shifted again.
Like that. Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
so it wasn't, and then on top of it, when the change of the house thing, which I also explained to Nick, that it wasn't about the change of the house. It was about the fact that there was another abrupt change in your life while you found out this information. And so your stability, that which you've been looking for, was rocked again.
It felt like a 9.5 magnitude earthquake at the time. That's a really good way, I feel like, to try and like visualize or conceptualize it, because this place had become a safe place for me, you know, and I had just gotten that news and I felt like I had handled it really well when he first reached out to me, and then I got it. And on the van, I called my mom, and my mom was like, that's wrong. You need another test. And I'm like, what's going on? My mom has always been a huge rock in my life. So I want to believe her, but I also love science and I believe science. And then, so all of these things, it was like my whole world was spinning. And then I was like, and this bed that I'm going back to isn't even mine. These people that are such a constant in my life, this community, I'm not even going to have them, you know? So it was just, like you said, like, all that stability that I had been working so hard to build for myself, it was very shaky.
And that's the perfect example of an emotional trigger, where it's not what's going on necessarily in front, but what it's bringing up underneath. It was deeper than the house.
Oh, way deeper.
You know, and
I knew I was going to have to move houses eventually.
Right.
It was just logically, that one little thing, like that one domino at the very end that causes the kaboom.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think I was on my way. I think I was leaving.
You were.
And Eric, I think, had said something, you know, like Kayla's freaking out, you know, because I want to say, they asked you or told you that you were going to have to leave, and it obviously didn't go as planned for them in terms of the way you received it.
Nay.
But,
so, you know, I mean, it all worked out. You know, we had our conversation under the tiki, but I do remember calling Nicole and being like, she's going nuts. Like, she is freaking out, chain smoking cigarettes. I'm like, I almost feel like I need a paper bag, like, because she was hyperventilating. Or did you have a paper bag?
No, I don't think I did have a paper bag. Nope.
But it was like, you know, and I've been working in this field a long time, and that was like, you know, I would have not been surprised if you said fuck it and started hiking up Military Trail, because that's like where, but you know, you didn't. Things settled, you calmed down, however that worked, I can't remember. But you know, all that to say, I'm glad. Obviously, circumstances are less than ideal. I wouldn't want anybody to have to go through that, but I'm glad it happened.
Me too.
Because of, you know, well, speak into that. Like, how you're a year sober now.
I'm a year sober.
This happened, you know, 8-9 months ago.
Yeah. This is a great time to get into the little story I wanted to tell you, Nicole.
Yeah.
So, I'm very glad that it happened. You know, I have had conversations with my biological father. His name's Clark. He's also in recovery. Huge God moment. Yeah, huge God moment. He's been nothing but supportive, and I face a lot of guilt because I sometimes don't have the emotional energy, the emotional spoons, as my friend would say, like, you know, the energetic exchange to try and develop a relationship. You know, he lives in California. He's across the country. But he's been so patient and so kind, you know, really letting me kind of take the lead with all of that. A couple weeks ago, you know, he offered to get me like an actual ancestry kit so I can know about my history, know about my
Wow.
health and all of that. Because I never really had a connection, you know, to my ancestry, to my lineage, whatever that may be, you know. That whole experience, there's other layers to that night too. That was the night that the guy that I was dating, my rehab romance, was relapsing, and I didn't know that. I had asked him to come and pick me up, and he said sure. Like trying so hard to be there for me. His car ended up breaking down. He had gotten in an accident because he was high. But the experience with my biological father, the funny story was when he had asked me about my ancestry kit, I told him that my year was coming up. The next day, I come home and I have a package and I don't know who it's from. It's a 1-year medallion.
Wow.
Oh my God,
And
I
it-
just got
Yeah,
goosebumps.
he had got me my 1-year medallion. And I just think like the full circle moment of all of that. The first time that
Wow.
I told him I was going to be speaking for a service commitment, somebody had asked me to do H&I. He said, please, if they record it, send it to me. You know, I'll pay for it, like whatever. Like he wants to know me in any way that he can. And
Wow.
even though I can't fly out there and meet him or can't spend all this time like getting to know him as I want to, like this is a small way for him to know who I am too. And I think that that's really beautiful. And it also, this whole experience has made me appreciate my dad in a whole other way too. You know, he chose me. Like there's so many ways that this could have gone. But he chose me through all my meltdowns and through all of that. He never let that honor like go. And what a freaking guy, you know,
Mhm.
what a guy to be there with me through all of that. Like you thought that freak out was a bad one, you know. My dad has seen 10 times worse. My poor ex-husband has seen 10 times worse, you know. So the hyperventilating, the all of that whole experience, it really brought into focus for me, one, how much work I need to do, how much work I've already done, because I didn't go out and I didn't drink.
Right.
I really wanted to. I really, like, in my head, I thought about, like, not that I, like, wanted to die or anything because I didn't, but just, like, the insanity, the
Mhm.
alcoholic insanity, of just, like, I can't handle this. I gotta go. Like, I gotta leave this planet now, you know? Like,
Yeah.
let's just shut it off, you know? The hot and cold mentality and just seeing how being still and sitting in it, giving it that space to pass and feeling it, like, that was huge.
That was so big.
Mhm.
Because and to Tom's point, like I'm obviously that was something very difficult for you in the moment, and I it just pains me that you had to have that experience. At the same time, I'm grateful it happened within the confines of treatment and with the support of treatment, because like you said, it gave us something to look at. And you said something before how I did not get straight A's in treatment. The only thing I did perfect was not pick up. And that's what we want that.
Mhm.
Because when those things come up, we're able to work on it, and it shows us what it is we actually have to work on, because it's bringing up something internally that's always been there. It's just bringing it to the surface.
Mhm.
And Kayla had so many obstacles like come in during her time in treatment. Like I'm thinking of other things that happened too.
Yeah, like
just
how many hands?
yeah, and it was, you know, and I felt bad because there was times where we would be like, all right, we did like the resourcing for EMDR, we did the treatment plan for EMDR, but then other things would come up, and it was it taught me in the process with you. You taught me so much in meeting somebody where they're at, and not just okay, yeah, I have this thing, let's go and do this thing. It's more like, okay, this is coming up, this is important, this is in the forefront of what needs to be looked at. And so it helped me to I guess life on life's terms, for lack of a better way of putting it. And you know, the fact that you went through all those obstacles in treatment and you never gave up, you never quit, even though you wanted to, even though everything in you, your fight or flight was kicking in full gear and you sat with it, Kayla.
Yeah. It's crazy, like, because for me, I'm trying to think about like how to word this, but for me, those moments almost feel like home. Those big bang moments, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. I remember we talked about that out under the tiki hut as well, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I was talking with my classmate about this today too, like the healthy discernment and detachment from things are going too well, something's got to happen, but those moments do happen. They happen, in addiction, and they happen in sobriety. Like finding out about my biological father, Kenny died. He was gone, and we had already stopped seeing each other at that point. But, losing somebody that was like, they always say you're going to trip over bodies in your first year, but losing somebody that was like, you thought that like had this, they had the emotional awareness, they had the intelligence, they were on like the same level. I really thought he was going to make it.
Who's Kenny?
Kenny was the guy that I was, well, you might not remember. What spurred me to look for another treatment center was originally to find a treatment center that would allow for couples, because I wanted what I wanted. And we started dating in treatment, and I made that decision to leave him at the other treatment center. We were still seeing each other and everything, but to come here, that was my moment where I chose myself. And we still saw each other. And then it wasn't even the relapse that made me leave him. It was the lie. I had set a boundary and I stuck to it. Like, be honest with me. And the shame and the guilt of relapse, he wasn't honest with me, and I ended things. And then a couple months later, he passed away.
From an overdose?
From an overdose.
Oh, man.
Yep.
Yeah, she went through a lot. Yeah, it was a lot of, like, to your point, life on life's terms. And you're right, things happen whether you're using or sober. And I think during that moment in the tiki hut, it was another reinforcement of, well, something bad's happening again. And when you go through traumatic experiences, your brain is hyper vigilant to those things to keep you alive and keep you safe. But it does the counterintuitive part, which is keeping you in that fight or flight. And even when things are okay, it still feels like it's not.
Yes. And now I'm really, now I'm in a space where things are starting to settle a little bit, and I don't know what to do with it. Like, I'm thankful for it, but it feels very foreign, sometimes boring. And I'm like constantly like coaching myself and being like, peace doesn't mean boredom. Boredom doesn't mean peace. And in dating, that's a big one too, well, there's no red flags. Like, where are the butterflies? What do you mean? Like, and it's underwhelming almost. And it feels like this is it, But I also think back, like, that is my brain, I feel like, is maybe just now starting to regulate
itself. Yeah.
And I still feel like it hasn't, because it's been so like the spikes for so long, and that's exciting. I'm still an addict. I'm still an alcoholic. Those things are exciting to me. So it's very foreign.
Yes. And it's especially because, with drugs and alcohol hijacking the pleasure reward system, it spikes all those happy chemicals. So then normal, quote unquote, things don't give the same feeling. And it does take time for that to regulate. And there's moments where you're enjoying the piece, but then it's like, wait a minute, this is kind of boring. I want to do something to excite this.
Yes.
Right. And so it takes time, really. Time. And this is something that I think I told you the story. So I was watching this interview with Brene Brown.
Love her.
I love her so much. And she was saying how there was a gentleman who was married, I forget how long, 20 plus years. And do you remember this?
I think about it all the time. Go on.
Oh, yes. It's so good. And
make it quick, though, because I got a couple other things I want to bring up.
Okay.
So he was always waiting for the shoe to drop. Always could never lean into joy. Always waiting. Oh, I can't really lean into this because something bad's going to happen. And then she ended up getting into a car accident and she passed away. And so it made him realize that he wished he would have leaned into those moments of joy and peace because it didn't prevent that from happening.
Right.
So you can't dress rehearse tragedy.
Worry is interest paid on trouble before it's due. That's what my dad always says.
I love that.
Worry is interest paid on trouble before it's due. Whoa. That's cool.
I think about that all the time. I was just
Do
telling
you?
somebody about that earlier this week. Yeah.
All right. We don't have much time left.
Sorry. We like to yap.
No, it's all good. So you celebrated a year sober yesterday. And just a disclaimer, we don't take couples here. We weren't the treatment center.
No, but I made that choice to leave the couple.
I just didn't want to leave any confusion out there. We do not do couples.
No.
Ever.
No. Big no.
Big no.
Where was I going with this? So anyways, you celebrated a year sober yesterday.
Sure did.
Did you say you just took somebody through the steps, or you're starting to?
I just got my first sponsee the night before I celebrated my 1 year. Yep. So got my first sponsee, celebrated my 1 year. It was my friend's 1 year celebration that night. She had to postpone her medallion ceremony. And then somebody approached me to be their sponsor, and we're meeting on Sunday.
So what's been your overall experience with AA?
Wow. Okay. So I bought in right off the bat. Coming into treatment, I was ready to surrender. It got to that point for me. The surrendering to God or whatever, hated that. It made me, taste metal in my mouth. I was like, that dude, like, no. So it took me a while to get around to that. But I knew that this had worked for other people. And I was so resistant to AA for so many years. But by the time I came to treatment, I was like, I'm doing what they say. Why not? I literally have nothing to lose. So the experience for AA as a whole, the community and the fellowship, that is such a big part of it for me. People come and go through chapters of your life. Not everybody is meant to stay, but the fellowship of AA has been a big rock in my life. I just keep saying the word rock. It's so funny to me.
I keep thinking it when you say it.
The fellowship has been amazing. The steps have been tough. Not tough necessarily. The step work itself was good. Like, I wanted to do a really thorough inventory. I came in here ready to do the work. That was something that I saw maybe I was ready to, that some other people around me were a little bit more hesitant towards. But hard work didn't scare me. The way I saw it was I had lived through so much, like, it would be a disservice not to take advantage. I had a sponsor in the beginning, and I made the choice to move to a different sponsor. Ben Harrison actually recommended to another friend here in treatment, Rose, and she sponsored her. I met her, saw who she was as a person. I call her Saint Rosa in my head. And they always say when you choose a sponsor, choose somebody who has what you want internally, not externally. And I saw that with her. And she took me all the way through step 9. Step 9 is where you start to make direct amends, I believe. Yes. And then, she had amends that she had to make, and she's not in Florida anymore for a while. And so I moved on to another sponsor, and then that sponsor also had to leave for a little bit. And so I was really battling, like, my 4th step. It was over 30 pages. And it took a long time with Rose to get to that point. I was begging her to let me 5th step with her because I was going on a trip. I was going to be a maid of honor in a wedding across the country. Of course, there was going to be booze. And I had seen people go out on their 4th step. I called it in my head like the 4th step curse. And I felt like since it had taken me so long to get through my 4th step, that I was going to relapse. I had this fear that I was going to relapse on my 4th step. So I tried to get it done. So I begged her to let me 5th step before this trip. And we did. We sat in my car for probably 6 hours. And I remember her saying, like, yeah, her approach to the 4th step was a little bit different. She wanted me to break down how each resentment, and this was her suggestion, and I agreed to it because I wanted to be thorough, which we ended up having to go back and compromise, not put the cart before the horse, et cetera, et cetera. But she wanted me to dissect each resentment and break down how it affected my personal relations, how it affected my sexual relations, how it affected my pride and my pocketbook, and all of that. And when your 4th step is already 30, 40 pages, going back through and doing that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm an overachiever, but like that was too much. I would have been doing it for a whole, like, I had a job, I was in school, it wasn't feasible. And she and I went back and forth a little bit, but in the end, we compromised.
Mhm.
And that's a testament as to what I think sponsorship is supposed to be. Like, basically, I just needed somebody to hear what I did, help me with my defects so I could ask them to be removed. And we were able to do that. It wasn't conventional. It wasn't, we're both perfectionists, she and I. So we battled with that a little bit. Both of us battle our perfectionism, but we both compromise. And I think as a sponsee, and if you ask her as a sponsor, that was probably a really big moment. But we got it done. And I do plan to do the steps again soon. I'm going to let the information integrate for a little bit and be a sponsor for a little bit. Give it a chance to let my perception shift a little bit more before I go back in, because a lot of those resentments, I don't think that you can just give up like right off the bat, stuff as a child, stuff as an adult, like that deep trauma stuff, it takes more time and reflection. But I needed to get through the steps, because in my head, what I've learned from treatment and AA is if you don't do these steps, you're going to go back out. And if you go back out, there's only two options. You're either going to get sober or you're going to die, or you're going to go to prison,
Yeah.
So to me, to drink was to die. So I needed to finish these steps. In the end, it's my roommate, Kristen, who took me through the last of my steps.
Wow.
I would be lost without her in my life. And we're just about the same amount of time sober. She was actually my great grand sponsor, and we didn't even know it. She had taken Rose's sponsor through the steps for the first time. Like, it's just those little, the red string theory, God is everywhere. But she took me through my final step, and now I'm sponsoring, and I'm really looking forward to it. Service has been huge in AA for me. And of course, not every day do you like get out of school or get off of work and be like, yeah, I'm so excited to go speak in front of a room full of people. But you do it and you show up. And even on those days that I begrudgingly did it, I left there feeling so different. So the service part is a hugely underrated part of this program, and it can be just opening a door. But for me, I like to be reminded of who, like sitting in front of people who just a year ago were where I was at,
Very well put.
Thanks.
Well, let's land this plane, shall we?
Shall. Is that how you say it?
Prepare for
What?
departure.
That was great.
Thank you. Thank you
It's
for
like
having me.
you've done podcasts before.
No,
First time.
first time.
Very good communicator.
It's an honor.
She is, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Kayla, for what it's worth, seeing your growth has been absolutely, I mean, like Nicole said, it's why we do what we do, being able to do these podcasts and having people come on and share where they are and, the impact now that you're having on other women that are, you have so much to offer people.
Hopefully.
And, I know everybody that's listens to this is going to get something out of it. And, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. So
Thank
Absolutely.
you. It really is an honor to be in this place.
yeah.
And
And can I
Get to
brag
share.
about one thing?
absolutely.
She has her own place now.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yep.
She is hair school.
Hair school. I found
Oh,
a
that's what I wanted to
passion.
ask you. Yeah. What are you in school for?
I am in cosmetology school, and I'm
Yes,
working
she
in a
is.
salon that I love, and a whole passion and purpose that came out of this this thing that I never even thought possible, because it's way more than just doing hair. It's a chance to be there for my community.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't have it in me to go get my master's, and I have so much inner work that I want to do, but showing up for people, I get to show up for people and
Yeah.
hold that space, and it's an honor. Like, it really is. And
amazing.
it's
When will you be done with school?
in April.
Nice.
Hmm.
Great.
Yeah, I'm working on clients now.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's
Good stuff.
going really well. I don't know how to react to it, but I'm just trusting it.
There you go.
Hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Is that it, Nicole?
I just want to tell you how much I adore you. And, it's funny, Maya and I were talking about how there's like therapists that say you shouldn't say to your clients that you're proud of them because it incites for the person to feel like they need to please you.
Ah.
But when I say I'm proud of you, I don't mean because it has anything to do with me. I'm proud of you as a human being. that you get up and you do what you need to do to take care of Kayla, even the days that you don't want to.
Even if it's 30 minutes late.
Even if it's 30 minutes late. And, and you know what? Screw that. I am proud of you.
Thank you.
And thank you for just trusting me. And I'm so grateful to be a part of your story.
I'm really thankful to have you. Thankful is an understatement for that one. Yeah. I don't think I could have done any of this without this place at all. And yeah, the support, the trust, the love. Yeah.
You have to send this to Clark?
Clark.
Yeah.
I sure will.
Hey, Clark.
Hi, Clark.
Hi, Clark.
Pleasure to meet you, Clark. All right.
I love it.
Thanks, Kayla.
Thank you.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.